Hi, and welcome to the Training Show. I'm Kirsten Kloss. Thank you very much for watching. On today's episode, we're going to be focusing on industrial operations training in new plant startups. I've asked Dave Defoe to join us here today from Learning SI to give us some insight on the topic. Dave, thanks very much for joining us today on the program.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So Dave is a certified human resources professional with extensive industry-based human resources and training experience and has been employed with Learning SI for the past 3 years. Dave specializes in operations, maintenance, and leadership development learning process. With a background spanning more than 30 years in oil and gas and pulp and paper, Dave has keen insights into what is required to effectively train and educate facility personnel to ensure required competency and resulting optimization of plant safety and operations efficiency. A good accreditation in order to maybe give us some insight here on this whole topic of new plant startups and what's required. Dave, maybe first of all give our audience kind of a high level of what Learning SI does and how that relates to the parent company, LotusWorks.
Yeah, well, LotusWorks is like you mentioned, our parent company, and has been around for a number of years. LotusWorks specializes in industrial commissioning of facilities, project management, construction management, automation and controls work, headquartered in Ireland, as well as offices in the US and Canada. Learning SI is kind of a newly formed or rebranded division of LotusWorks, and with a focus exclusively on industrial operations training. We have been around for about 20 years under a couple of different banners, but most recently rebranded under the name of Learning SI, which stands for Learning Solutions for Industry.
So in a new startup then, so if you've got this new plant that you've just rolling up, what's the process that's involved, and how does Learning SI get involved in setting up a training program for something like that?
That's a good question. I mean, typically when you go through a new project development, my experience has been that training ends up coming at the tail end of that development cycle. I think some companies are doing it better than others. But I believe that training needs to be incorporated way back in the beginning and being considered back in the engineering design. So engineering and into procurement, when companies are buying materials, buying equipment, training should be considered in part of that. There's a lot of vendors, equipment, a lot of vendor training that can be provided to operators that I think is very valuable for startup, as well as being able to capture that information from vendors on equipment specific stuff that can be used in the future. That's one key point, is being able to introduce training or to consider training earlier on in the development process for a new startup. Once you're into the phase of commissioning and getting into startup of the plant, it's really an assessment of what you're operating, what your expectations are of the operators themselves. Our typical approach is to do a task analysis. So what are we expecting the operators to do? We'll go through a plant and take a look at the different roles that have been defined, determine what they need to do, determine what they need for competency. What do they need to know in order to do those tasks? And then start to develop the materials, the content, and the process to facilitate that, so that in the end you have a competent operator to not only start up your plant but also to run it long term.
So how involved is this for the operations manager or the project manager in a particular plant? What's involved from their side, and how much of it gets handled by Learning SI?
It varies, but certainly we can't do that alone. We work hand in hand with the operations, whether it's the operators, operations managers, understanding that they're in a very busy time as well, particularly in a startup mode. But those individuals are the ones that are going to have to operate the plant. I mean, we go away at some point, and those are the ones that are essentially the subject matter experts. We would be the subject matter experts on putting the process together, developing the content, and putting it into a format that can be used over and over again with the operators to determine and develop their competency in whatever role that they're being asked to do. at the plant.
So now, in the case of who is the person actually that's ideally involved in this early stage communication with you? Is that the project manager? Or the plant
Could
manager?
be, depending on what phase we're coming into the project at, but certainly the operations manager has a key role.
Okay.
They're the ones that are going to be targeted with starting up the facility.
And what's the first step for them in engaging you?
Well, I think part of the reason why we're doing this is just to get our name out in front of people. Like I said, we've been around 20 years. We worked in a lot of different industries, mostly in North America, but globally. But it's really about making the initial contact, and having the discussion around what their needs are. That may vary with individuals. Might have a whole lot of experience on the training end, and we could support whatever their needs are. And we also have companies, industries, operations that have limited experience. So we need to figure out what we can do to support what the needs are of the individual startup companies.
So basically, a needs assessment meeting and connection, so to get things
Yes.
started.
Yes.
Well, great. So how can somebody reach your company and get this process moved started?
Well, easiest way, we've just, like I said, we talked about rebranding. So you can go on our website. It's under learningsi.com. There's hopefully some good information in there to give you more insights into what our capabilities and background are. We have some profiles and bios on the people that work for our company. Most, if not all, have significant industrial experience. That's kind of the mainstay for our company. As well as there's contact information there, either through email, through phone calls. There's a couple of contacts on the contact page, and we welcome your inquiries.
Well, great, Dave. Sounds like an interesting new area or new direction for LotusWorks. Learning SI. Thanks very much for joining us, Dave.
Thank you. Appreciate
We've been
it.
speaking with Dave Defoe with Learning SI. You can check out their website at learningsi.com. I'm Kirsten Kloss. Thanks very much for watching. Take care.